It started with a clink of overpriced glasses and a toast that sliced through the noise like a scalpel. Dani Rivera, CFO, champagne warrior, and queen of performative leadership, lifted her crystal flute high and smirked. To the future, she said, her voice syrupy and smug, and to finally shaking off the chains of negativity. Without risk slowing us down, we can finally move fast. A ripple of laughter followed, hungry and hollow. Someone from the strategy team let out an actual cheer. I watched the bubbles in my glass rise like little ghosts, then took the last sip. Warm, flat, not unlike the applause echoing across the room. I didn't blink. I didn't speak. I just set the glass down gently, right beside the untouched compliance memo I'd tucked into my purse 3 hours earlier, the one Dani never read. By the way, if you're here listening and find yourself gripping your seat or your sanity, do us a solid. Hit that subscribe button and throw a like on this video. You have no idea how much that helps our team keep bringing these stories to life. Now, back to it. The party was one of those quarterly morale things, an open bar, cheap sushi that probably violated 3 health codes, and a DJ that played 90s hits, ironically. They'd rented out a fake loft downtown. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, too many mirrors. The kind of place that screamed, "We're a culture, not a company." It reeked of projection and artisanal deodorant. Dani floated from group to group, all smiles and backpats. You'd never guess that 4 months earlier, she nearly tanked a vendor deal by forgetting to file a change order with legal. That was blamed on process gaps. My department was the process. Now we were apparently the problem. When I was formally shifted out of risk and into advisory only, the memo didn't even come to me directly. I found out through a Slack channel titled How Project Surge. Some intern posted a gif of a rocket taking off with the caption, "No more breaks on this train." My name wasn't on the call list anymore. My calendar emptied itself overnight like it was shedding me. I didn't fight it. That's what no one could understand. No exit interview, no HR escalation. Just quiet. And quiet scares people more than rage. My office became a ghost ship. Dani's new risk light regime didn't even bother to reassign my projects. My tracker, built across 10 years of late nights and internal audits, sat untouched, except by me. So when the party happened, I knew what it was. Not a celebration, a eulogy. They were burying the version of the company that had discipline, oversight, accountability, the kind that didn't gamble vendor contracts on hope and caffeine. And they were doing it with sushi and speech bubbles from people who'd never read a single line of our insurance protocols. Someone passed by with a tray of tuna tartare and winked. "Hey, Mara," he said, holding up a tiny fork. "No more meetings with you killing the vibe, huh?" More laughter. I gave him a nod. I wanted to ask if he'd checked the policy expiration date on our third-party data handlers, but why ruin the mood? I moved toward the windows, where the music was a little softer. I looked out at the skyline, pretending to admire the view. What I was really watching was a reflection. Mine. Calm, unmoving. The kind of stillness that only comes after you've already decided to stop saving people from themselves. Across the room, Dani held court like a TED Talk on Red Bull. She was ranting about velocity metrics and innovation tiers. I heard someone say, "She's a beast." They meant it as a compliment. I almost smiled. Because the thing no one realized is that I never stopped doing my job. I just stopped reminding them. Every missing signature, every skipped review, every auto-renew policy someone assumed was set and forget. It was all logged. Not in the system. In my system. Offline. Immutable. And tonight, while they toasted their brilliance, I had already marked the clause. Just one, just enough. The countdown had already started. They just didn't know it yet. It started weeks before the party, before the clinking glasses and backpats and whatever hors d'oeuvre was trending on Instagram that month. No announcement, no all hands, just a silent little tweak buried in an internal update. Risk sign-off was no longer mandatory on expansion initiatives, not eliminated, not phased out, just delegated where applicable. In corporate speak, that's like saying you can pee in the pool as long as it's not near the ladder. The update came from Dani's office, probably written by one of her grinning strategy consultants who treat governance like a buzzkill at Coachella. They tossed around words like velocity, frictionless ops, and low-resistance implementation. Translation? We're gambling big and hoping no one notices until it's someone else's fault. By the following Monday, my calendar was a joke. Invites vanished. Threads dried up. A few kind souls forwarded meeting summaries, usually with a "just FYI" in the subject line, like they were handing me breadcrumbs from a table I used to set. Then came the official HR form. New title, Strategic Risk Advisor. No reports, no voting rights, no seat at compliance steering. It was less a demotion and more a quiet erasure. I didn't object. I printed the org change email and tucked it into the back of my personal compliance binder, one of the old school leather ones I kept at home. The kind you can't accidentally lose in the cloud. Because I knew, you don't disarm the brakes unless you're planning to crash, or too stupid to know what one looks like. The next clue came from a junior PM named Aisha. She was green, but sharp, still believed in escalation protocols. She pinged me one evening, off hours, which meant she was nervous. "Hey, quick cue. Do we still have coverage on the surge partner nodes? I can't find the 11B cert in the portal." I didn't answer right away. I pulled up the tracker. Policy 11B governed third-party data failover incidents, specifically for accelerated partnerships. It was up for renewal that month. I'd marked it red 2 weeks earlier. I forwarded the message to Danny's new ops lead with a short note. Relevant to Surge Initiative. See attached. No reply. The email was marked read. That was enough. 2 days later, Aisha replied to her own thread with a shrugging emoji and a line that made my stomach turn. All good. Leadership says no worries. Everything's under control. Under control. That's corporate language for don't ask again unless you want to be on the chopping block too. I didn't message her back. I didn't raise hell or hit the panic button. I just went to my home office, opened my compliance map, and updated the tracker. Policy 11B, renewal status, unknown. Risk sign off, revoked. I timestamped it, printed a hard copy, slipped it behind the dividers next to the old breach logs from 2020. The same week, we nearly lost a $5 million contract because someone tried to rush procurement without verifying cyber liability thresholds. We survived that one because I caught it in time. This time, I wasn't invited. I watched from the outside as Project Surge picked up steam. Interns were running onboarding calls. The vendor, some third-party cloud startup with a logo that looked like a fidget spinner, was barely SOC 2 compliant. Their roadmap slide deck had more clip art than clauses, but Dani liked them. "They move fast," she said, "and they don't bog us down with paperwork." That was her favorite dig, paperwork. As if diligence was an anchor and not the only reason we hadn't been sued into oblivion by Q2. They called it progress. I called it malpractice with glitter. Every time I opened the dashboard, I saw more green lights, more unchecked boxes. One line caught my eye in particular. Risk acknowledgement waived by CFO directive. I took a screenshot, printed it, added it to the file. I didn't warn anyone after that, not out of pettiness, out of precision. If you scream into the wind too long, people stop hearing you. But paper? Paper listens. Paper remembers. I started showing up less. When I did, it was with my coffee and a clipboard, nodding politely in meetings I wasn't allowed to comment on. I took notes. Not for them. For me, I wasn't being removed. I was being positioned. And positioning? That's where the real power hides. So I waited. Let the gaps widen, let the noise build, because I knew one thing they'd all forgotten. It's not the crash that kills you. It's thinking you're flying. It was like watching someone floor a sports car with the oil light blinking and the engine held together by gum and LinkedIn endorsements. The partnership with Zephyr Cloud got greenlit on a Friday, naturally, so there'd be no time for legal to dig their heels in. It was the kind of vendor deal that came pre-packaged with champagne and a buzzword bingo card. Quantum encrypted failover, AI stabilized latency, zero paper onboarding. Dani practically salivated. No one asked how a 2-year-old startup out of Tulsa was going to handle migrating 3 petabytes of client data. They just liked the pitch deck. Legal was told, politely but firmly, to align, not obstruct. That's Dani's go-to phrase when she wants a rubber stamp without the mess of a conscience. I watched our in-house counsel Greg nod and scribble some vague notes about conditional approval pending risk review, which of course never came, because risk was me, and I'd already been cut from the loop. The kickoff meeting for the vendor integration was held in one of those obnoxiously named Zoom rooms, War Room, Zephyr, Kickass. I wasn't on the invite. Didn't need to be. I had a standing login to the document tree, and Dani's new ops lead hadn't revoked it yet. Sloppy, but convenient. That Monday, I logged in at 6 a.m. before the system tags updated. I wasn't trying to sabotage anything. I wasn't looking to leave a trail of breadcrumbs. I just wanted one clean note, one simple act of clarity. Inside the compliance audit tracker, I scrolled to section 4, vendor risk mapping, subsection 11B. There it was, blank. No renewal cert, no countersignature, no coverage start date. Just a dusty pending review flag from 3 weeks ago. I typed 3 words, renewal pending, unconfirmed. Then I tagged the entry with my credentials and a timestamp. No alert, no escalation, nothing flashy, just a quiet, blinking dot in a forgotten cell of an internal spreadsheet no one thought mattered. Then I removed myself from the shared folders, every one of them. Remove access? The system asked. I clicked yes. System confirmed. No one noticed. I didn't attend the launch call that afternoon. I sat in my office, packed 2 boxes with old files, and took down my certainty over speed plaque. I left it on the desk, not for drama, just for contrast. By Wednesday, Zephyr Cloud was live. Emails flying, onboarding kits sent out to 6 client teams, developers bragging about the performance spikes. There was even a Slack channel called #Zephyr Hype. Someone made a meme of Dani in sunglasses with the caption, Fast Lane CEO. Dani loved it. She held a virtual AMA where she talked about cutting dead weight and how innovation meant stepping over the bureaucracy. At one point, someone asked about insurance implications. She laughed and said, "That's why we have umbrella policies. Legal's got us covered." Legal, who was now skipping weekly syncs because they were redundant. Meanwhile, in my offsite backup binder, I slid in a printed copy of the Slack thread, because I don't believe in umbrellas that haven't been opened in a storm. They didn't realize it yet, but the minute they onboarded that vendor without risk sign-off, without 11B renewed, without verifying that clause in the underwriter's appendix, they stepped out onto a frozen lake with a flamethrower. And me, I was already on the shore, watching. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't even disappointment. It was detachment. Clean. Clinical. I had done my job. They had undone it. Now the process was free to unfold. Like gravity. Or fire. Not malicious. Just inevitable. The first crack didn't look like a crack. It looked like a routine client complaint. Minor, whiny, something account managers usually smooth over with Starbucks gift cards and buzzwords like roadmap resolution. The client was a mid-size wealth management firm out of Denver. They'd been testing the new system integration through Zephyr Cloud for barely 48 hours when they noticed inconsistencies in their access logs. Timestamp mismatches, a weird latency gap, nothing earth-shattering, just enough to make a compliance officer twitch. They flagged it politely in a ticket. "Hi team, could you confirm the integrity of the migration logs between 1:17 a.m. and 1:52 a.m. UTC? Looks like we lost some sync state." The vendor replied in under an hour. "Likely a UI cache lag. All systems show green on our end." That smiley face might as well have been a middle finger. When you're dealing with fiduciary-level data and the vendor's using emojis, you know you've left the freeway and are barreling down an unlit dirt road with no brakes. I wasn't copied on the ticket chain, of course, but I still had visibility into the incident logs. Old habits. Quiet access. They hadn't scrubbed all the admin channels. Not yet. That same day, DevOps logged 2 non-fatal failover events. That's internal speak for the fire didn't reach the gas line. Yet. The logs were incongruent. Failover node 2 triggered independently without any paired escalation, which shouldn't happen in a mirrored system. A junior engineer flagged it in the chat. "Hey, is this supposed to flip without 1A first?" Silence. Someone replied with, "Looking into it." That thread went dead by noon. Then came the email. A middle manager named Theo, well-meaning, perpetually overwhelmed, the kind who still prints his Outlook calendar, sent a vague note to Leadership Ops plus Risk Group, Legacy, with the subject line. "Quick queue on third-party coverage." The body was short. "Hey all, just wondering if we ever finalize coverage for third-party fail points under the Surge integration. Probably nothing but saw a log mismatch. Want to be sure we're aligned. THX." He included a smiley face too. It stung more than the vendors. I opened the email, read it slowly, twice. Then I looked at the to field. No one replied. Not even an out of office. It was like watching someone yell fire into a black hole. I could have answered him. I could have looped in the right people, attached the clause, pasted the audit log, but I didn't. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a coffee, and opened my home laptop. I logged the moment. Policy 11B, confirmed, no response to coverage inquiry. I printed the email, added it to the binder. Because at this point, it wasn't about prevention. It was about record keeping. I had spent years playing safety net to a company that thought gravity was optional. I'd written protocols they never read, saved them from fines they never saw, shielded them from fallout they thought never existed. And now? Now they were doing exactly what they wanted. Moving fast, untethered, free from negativity. I watched them blur past every stop sign, every guardrail, and I knew, with the precision of a clockmaker, what came next. It was in the silence between warning and impact. The stillness before the first domino tips. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that starts with weak coffee, a full inbox, and that creeping sense you're about to become someone's scapegoat. At 9:14 a.m., a system alert pinged across half the DV floor. 3 client environments went dark simultaneously. Data vault corrupted, not delayed, not lagged, gone. By 9:16, a 4th client flagged total access failure, then 5, then 7. Legal was still finishing their lattes when the red flags started pouring in. Data loss, transaction gaps. One international client reported a complete rollback, 22 hours of activity just missing. Their compliance team was already firing off letters with the words breach of contract in bold. Zephyr Cloud's official incident channel lit up with panic-coded calm. Investigating with urgency. Initial assessment suggests minor fault in node synchronization. That's tech speak for we're flailing and praying the logs lie. I didn't get a direct message, no emergency Slack, not even a ping on Teams. What I got was a calendar invite. Subject line: policy reinstatement request. Urgent. No greeting, no context, just a one-line note in the body. Please confirm if you still have access to insurance policy 11B renewal materials. Need ASAP. Thanks. The sender? Danny's assistant. The poor woman probably thought she was asking about a form, not the last gasp of a system about to flatline. I sat still for a moment. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the air vent. My cat stretched lazily by the window. Somewhere in the distance, a leaf blower droned its oblivious tune. I clicked accept. Then I opened my private binder, flipped past the clipped emails, the Slack printouts, the flagged clauses, and the time-stamped entries. Policy 11B. There it was. My handwriting. Renewal status. Expired as of 10/12. I pulled out the document, highlighted the lapse clause, the one that stated in very dry legalese that data loss coverage was void if not renewed prior to any triggering event. The current date? November 4th. I made a pot of tea, not out of smugness, just habit, because people think collapse is dramatic. Explosions, screaming, theatrical failure. But this was quiet. Clinical, like a heart monitor flatlining in an empty room. Inside HQ, I imagined the chaos blooming like mold. Legal choking on disclaimers, account managers dialing clients with fake calm, Danny demanding answers from people she'd silenced. Assuming insurance would fix it, assuming they were still covered, assuming I would fix it. I watched the screen as a follow-up ping came in. Can we hop on a call in 10? I replied, yes, bring the inspector. Then I closed my laptop. Because the thing about collapse, by the time you notice the cracks, the foundation's already gone. He arrived looking like he'd just stepped off a flight no one was glad to take. Dark suit, insurance badge clipped to a belt loop, expression set somewhere between bored and bracing for impact. His name was Calvin Price, but everyone just called him the Inspector, like he was death with a clipboard. They ushered him into conference room C, the big one with the fake ficus and the cheap speakerphone that always cut out during crucial moments. Danny was already seated when I walked in, her smile brittle, her eyes scanning for an exit that didn't exist. Thanks for making time, she said, the kind of voice you use when you've already drafted someone else's termination letter. Calvin didn't bother with pleasantries. He set his laptop down, clicked into the carrier's portal, and said flatly, "Let's go straight to policy 11B. Danny nodded like she had any idea what that entailed. Of course. We just need to confirm that everything's in place. We may have had some lag in the upload process during our reorg, but the intent was always... He cut her off. Intent doesn't bind coverage. Signatures do. He tapped a few keys, pulled up the log, and turned the screen. There it was. Stark. undeniable. Status, expired last renewal 10/12. Next due 11/001 renewal. Status, not submitted risk officer. Sign off, NA. Calvin leaned back in his chair. No drama, no sigh, just a calm, soul-level disappointment that said he'd seen this movie before and knew exactly how it ended. Danny went stiff. That's not possible. There must have been a gap in comms with the administrative team. Our assistant general counsel was supposed to. Your assistant general counsel doesn't have authority to execute risk-bound renewals, Calvin said. You do. I delegated that. To whom? Silence. Calvin looked at me. Ms. Jensen, were you ever informed of a policy delegation, formally or otherwise? I met his eyes. No, I was removed from the approval chain 4 weeks ago. I slid the folder forward, the one with every email, every policy log, every red flag. A clean stack of receipts, all time-stamped and quietly damning. He opened it, flipped through, nodded once. Clear timeline, he said. Thank you. Danny tried to recover. Okay, look, we understand there was a lapse. He held up a hand, not rudely, just conclusively. Ms. Rivera, the clause in question, subsection 5D, specifically outlines that failure to renew before a data-impacting event results in forfeiture of claim. You signed off on the original, you removed the risk officer, you failed to reauthorize the renewal. That's 3 points of negligence under the insurer's definitions. I was told, Danny started, her voice sharper now, the edge of panic rising. You were told? Calvin repeated, folding his hands. By whom? She blinked. He turned the laptop around, closed the lid, and stood. We'll be issuing a formal denial within the hour. I'll also be flagging this with our underwriting team. Your organization may face a reassessment of your insurability moving forward. Silence. Danny sat there like someone had cut the gravity under her chair. No voice, no bluster, just still. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Calvin gathered his notes, nodded once toward me, just enough to acknowledge who had actually done the work, and left the room. As the door closed behind him, Danny finally exhaled. This is going to cost us millions, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. I leaned back, calm, centered, because for once, the cost wasn't mine to carry. The room smelled like old coffee and fear. Back in the present, everything was quieter than before. The party energy that once spilled from glass walls and marketing decks was gone, replaced by the muffled shuffling of papers and the kind of stillness that only happens when people are praying no one asks a question they can't answer. But Calvin did. Who last had formal authority over Policy 11B? The question wasn't loud. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. 3 people looked at Danny. 1 looked at the door. She shifted in her seat. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time since her tenure began, Danny Rivera looked small. Her confidence, the kind that always seemed to hover just on the edge of smug, was gone. What remained was something hollow, paper-thin. I believe that was transitioned to strategic oversight, she managed, her voice brittle as spun sugar. Calvin blinked slowly. There is no record of a reassignment form. He turned toward me. Ms. Jensen, can you confirm? I nodded once, then opened my laptop without a word. My desktop loaded in seconds. No clutter, no noise. Just a simple spreadsheet I'd built myself, years ago, because I never trusted systems built by people who thought compliance was optional. I scrolled down column G until I hit the line. Policy 11B, third-party data coverage. Status, renewal pending risk sign off, revoked, per memo dated 10/2, final note, flagged for expiration on 10/12, no renewal request received. I rotated the screen toward the table, then reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. The same folder I'd brought to the cocktail party. I slid it forward slowly, precisely, paper whispering against wood like a sigh. Inside, copies of all email notices, calendar removals, policy logs, and the internal audit system records showing Danny had unchecked my signatory access without updating any chain of responsibility. Everything stamped, printed, and quietly ignored. Danny didn't even touch it. Her eyes skimmed the cover page, then stopped on the timestamp next to my initials. The color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. This wasn't escalated, she said weakly. It was logged, I replied. Per protocol. And you didn't think to override? I wasn't authorized, I said. Per your restructure. No heat, no malice, just policy, her policy. Calvin flipped through the binder slowly, with the steady hand of a man accustomed to postmortems. Page by page, he checked each entry, each highlight. He paused briefly at the Slack printout where legal joked about paperwork purgatory. Then he closed the folder, adjusted his tie, and said, "Well, that's airtight." I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. Because this wasn't a triumph. It was a receipt. Danny exhaled hard and pressed her palms flat against the table. "We need to figure out next steps." Calvin held up a hand. "Next steps are with your board and your insurers. This meeting is concluded." He stood. I closed my laptop. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was acknowledgement, not just of what happened, but of who allowed it. I picked up my glass of water, the same one I'd poured at the start of the meeting, still half full, still untouched. I set it down gently on the table, not for drama, for punctuation. The denial came at 8:07 a.m. sharp, an email so sterile it felt like an obituary in binary. Subject: Final claim determination. Policy 11B, one sentence. No room for argument, no condolences. Due to non-renewal at the time of loss, coverage under Policy 11B is null. Legal went quiet first, then Ops, then Danny. By noon, the board issued a formal notice. CFO Danielle Rivera was placed on administrative leave pending internal review. That's code for lawyers are coming and don't touch your email. The same people who'd toasted her brilliance with Prosecco now avoided eye contact in the hallway. The board called a closed session the following morning. No mimosas this time. Just black coffee, short agendas, and longer silences. The kind that come after impact, when everyone's trying to pretend they weren't cheering during the acceleration. I sat quietly at the end of the table, notepad unopened, hands folded. I wasn't there to testify. I was there to observe. The chairman cleared his throat, reading directly from a prepared statement. We've completed a preliminary review of risk oversight concerning the failed policy renewal and resulting data loss incident. Ms. Jensen's audit trail has been deemed complete, consistent, and uninterrupted. They paused, then looked directly at me. We recognize a structural failure, not of documentation, but of executive priority. We need risk not as a checkpoint, but as a partner in strategic decisions. They didn't apologize. I didn't ask them to. What came next wasn't theatrical, no standing ovation, just a motion passed by unanimous vote. Effective immediately, I was being reinstated, not in risk. That division was already being gutted and rebuilt. My new title, Director of Strategic Integrity. It came with no team, no politics, and one very sharp reporting line. Straight to the board. I wouldn't answer to ops or finance anymore. I wouldn't sit 3 rungs below decisions I used to prevent. I wouldn't need to send red flags into black holes and pray someone read past the subject line. Now, they'd come to me. When the meeting ended, I didn't linger. I shook hands. I thanked them. Then I walked out through a hallway that felt both familiar and entirely new. On my desk, my new desk, moved 1 floor up, glass door, no cubicle walls, was the binder. Someone had brought it from my bag and placed it neatly next to my nameplate. M. Jensen, Strategic Integrity, no flowers, no welcome banner, just a desk, a view, and the one thing I'd never needed permission to carry, proof. I sat down, opened the binder, slid in one last page, a copy of the claim denial, then I shut it, placed it in the drawer, and locked it. No vengeance, no parade, no champagne, just permanence. Endurance printed in black ink. The conference room smells like new carpet and old irony. It's orientation day for the new compliance hires. 6 of them, crisp resumes and hopeful smiles, all gathered around a PowerPoint titled, Building Forward Risk as Strategic Edge. Someone's ordered sandwiches, HR's handing out branded notebooks like participation trophies. On the far wall, freshly mounted in matte black letters, is a framed quote. Fast is fine. Blind isn't. No attribution, just impact. They don't know where it came from. Most assume it's some business book or motivational podcast. No one asks. But I do notice how their eyes linger on it a little longer than the other slides. Like they can feel it wasn't meant as inspiration, but as a warning. Down the hall, Calvin Price is wrapping up his final debrief. His laptop's shut, his jacket draped over one arm, and he's scribbling something in his notebook, likely the kind of sentence that becomes a footnote in someone's executive termination. I pass him near the elevators. He doesn't stop me, just mutters under his breath as he closes the case file. This is what fast and blind costs. He doesn't look at me when he says it. He doesn't need to. I keep walking. No pause, no victory lap, just motion. Because what happened wasn't a comeback, it wasn't a twist or a triumph, it was an outcome. The natural result of a system left to rot under ego and speed. The cheers that once followed Danny's toast, those are gone. Replaced now by silence, dotted with the occasional, "Have you checked with strategic integrity yet?" A few of the louder voices have gone mysteriously quiet. One director transferred departments, another pursued other opportunities. Danny's name hasn't been spoken in weeks. In the vacuum, people now forward things to me without being asked. Attach disclaimers to Slack threads. Tag me in policy discussions not out of obligation, but precaution. They don't do it because they like me. They do it because they learned. On my new desk, beside the dual monitors and the high back chair I didn't request, sits a single object that doesn't match the decor. A cheap, slightly chipped cocktail glass. The same one from the party. It no longer holds champagne. Now it holds paper clips. A quiet reminder that nothing here really changed. Except who listens. And why? I don't smile when I look at it. I don't need to. Because they used to celebrate fast. Now, they answer to documented. And I've still got the receipts.